right, here we go. All right. Well, thanks everybody who's joined us today to kick off the NICE Cybersecurity Awareness Week. NICE is the national organization affiliated with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's the arm of NIST that really develops both standards and helps to promote cybersecurity education. And we're going to talk about careers in cybersecurity, focused on the public sector, talk about the critical need for those, for more people to enter the field, what the roles are in the public sector, and a little bit about what the state of Ohio is doing to try to build that pipeline. And then we're going to turn to one way to either get started in a career or to advance your career. And that's the program that we offer here at Cleveland State University Law. So my name is Brian Ray. I direct that program, the Cleveland State University College of Law's Master of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy. I'm also one of the 2 associate deans here at the College of Law that oversees really everything with my colleagues and the dean, Lee Fisher. And really thrilled to have with us today Kirk Herath. Kirk has a long, distinguished career in privacy, cybersecurity. His current role is really a semi pro bono role. The current governor pulled him out of retirement and asked him to to create a brand new cabinet position and role for the state of Ohio, the Cybersecurity Strategic Advisor. And Kirk, it's been 3 years now. How many years have you been in it?
2.5 years.
2.5
this week, actually, I think, or sometime this week. Yeah, 2.5 years.
Yeah,
it's gone fast. It's gone very fast.
So in a little over 2 years, Kirk has really done some pretty amazing things. And Kirk also is one of the faculty in CSU's program, teaches the core required privacy law and management course, and we'll talk about all of those things here in a minute. So let's get started. And I should add, for those of you who are attending live, please feel free to either put a question in the chat or raise your hand. I'm happy to give you the opportunity to talk if you want to ask us questions along the way. We're always happy to go deeper into anything we're talking about, and then we will take a pause and invite questions towards the end of our discussion before we pivot into CSU's program. For those of you who are listening to the recording, you'll see some contact information in the slides that I'll pull up at the end. Feel free to reach out. We're always happy to answer questions both about our program and about cybersecurity careers in general. All right, so Kirk, I think the point's obvious, but let's dive into it and kind of maybe get a little bit more granular about the current state of play. Why do we need more people moving into cybersecurity and data privacy, which are not the same thing but are related?
Yeah. Well, we need more people in any field that is governing and protecting data, digital data. And over the last 20 years plus, we have digitized much of our economy. And the play here is not to make everything privacy only or security only, but it's a significant, it should be a component of everything you do in the digital space. So 5%, 6%, 7% of your spend should be in the space. Unfortunately, even if we were spending that kind of money out of our IT budgets, there aren't enough people in the United States to even take the roles that are available. The privacy space, I think, is a little better than the cybersecurity space. The cybersecurity space today, depending on who you talk to and what data you look at, in the United States alone, we have somewhere between 500,000 and 750,000 less people than we have jobs. Worldwide, I think last week I saw that it's up close to 4 million less people than we have jobs. So it's significant, I call it the donut hole, right? It's a significant hole in our workforce. And these are all fairly well-paying jobs. And now they aren't all entry level, so I don't want to oversell that. I
Right.
think early on I may have oversold that a little bit. It's like anything, right? You need of that 500 to 700,000, there are, 25-30% of them are entry level. And the bulk of them probably are people with, 3 to 10 years of experience. And then you've got the smallest number of people at the top, like the chief information security officers, people who would be in charge of that capability at a large organization. So it's a significant and dire, it's a national security issue, because in the last 5 to 10 years, the level and tenor of attacks on us, and I mean us as a let's talk about the West, but particularly the U.S., has gone up significantly. And whereas 20 years ago it was a lot of, kind of individual hackers in, maybe in mom's basement or something, it is nation state. It is nation state sponsored today. It's primarily the Chinese, Russians, Iranians, North Koreans, and then their proxies. And when I say proxies, they actually sponsor private enterprise, and they protect them, encourage and protect
Right.
what in years past would have been called privateers, right? So you're a merchantman back in 1700s, and you are asked by the United States or France or Britain to put a couple guns on your merchant ship and go out and try to sink the enemy ships. It's a way of and then you get to keep whatever you loot. And so it's a way of encouraging disruption in our country and in our culture, at a minimum cost to them. And so the biggest threat today is ransomware. And ransomware is just what it sounds like, right? The bad guys encrypt your computer, your network, your database, whatever, or all of the above. And then they send you a message and say, if you pay us X hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of Bitcoin, we will send you the keys to unencrypt all the stuff that we have just encrypted, and you can basically get your life back. So
Or your operation.
the threat has
Yeah.
gone up incredibly, and it's just wave after wave of attacks any given day.
Yeah. And the recent attention on AI and the very rapid emergence of AI tools into enterprise and other spaces is just continue to put pressure on that, and even more so on the privacy side. I just read a report this morning coming out of Europe, where that almost always is landing in the chief privacy officer's domain,
Yeah.
and it's a massive increase in the scope of the role, right?
Yeah.
So and adds again a different set of cybersecurity risks. So bottom line is this is an area that has already critical needs, and not one that is likely to diminish anytime in the
So I
future.
think,
Now,
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
you raise a good point on the privacy side. I mean, AI has been around since you and I were since before you and I were born in some rudimentary fashion. I think the first automated computerized processes, what we would call sort of machine learning, was the late 50s. So
ML.
Right. It predates me by just a little bit. You by a lot, right? So,
Maybe
but
not so much.
It's been expanding. It's been expanding, over the last 20 years. And so I was involved as a chief privacy officer of Nationwide Insurance. I got involved in the early 2000s in what we called at the time big data and analytics, right? And we had very comparatively rudimentary, immature tools today, which were really like R and other things that were basically machine learning that you would use to interrogate the data and find certain learnings from them, right? And it was mostly an efficiency play. How do we make our processes more efficient? But again, back to it was all using data. It was all using data. And it had to be not only the right data, but it had to be who has access to it, and more importantly, who does not have access to the test environments where we would use to interrogate the data. And then again, one of the things I think that you were hitting on is there are even, there are certain types of data that may be biased. They may have that may have a result that kind of illegally discriminates against protected classes. In my old world of insurance, we were allowed to discriminate legally within parameters, right? That's basically what insurance is. Like, you pay a little bit more if you're a little bit more risky. You pay a little bit less if you're a little bit less risky. But if you're cutting out an entire category of people based upon some data, then under our current legal system, that is something that you have to mitigate. And so the privacy team, in my experience, was incredibly important in enabling that and putting out some do's and don'ts. And again, it's not that AI itself is bad. It can sometimes result in some bad outcomes. So you have to test the outcomes, and if the outcomes are not what you want them to be, you come up with some new ways of designing your process and your algorithms so that they are less impactful.
Right, and a whole suite of, it boils down to risk assessment at bottom, which is a methodology that is very familiar to cybersecurity as well as privacy, but the scope of the considerations for AI are much broader, and especially when you're talking about not only internally facing tools like you're talking about, where you're trying to understand either a market or a customer or some kind of a service, but the externally facing, the generative tools, where you're letting loose into the world something that could literally cause harm in some way, either because it enables bad actors to do certain things, produces disinformation. So yeah. Anyways, wild world. So getting back to the demand, let's hone in on some of the things that you're doing as Cybersecurity Strategic Advisor. And before we get specific, just want to have you talk about, from where you sit, advising the governor of Ohio, what's the demand look like in the public sector, and why would somebody want to consider a public sector role as opposed to filling this massive demand and probably get paid pretty well, especially if you've got some experience in the private sector?
Yeah. Well, there are always reasons other than so public sector employees, they do get paid, and they get paid well,
Not free.
well enough. And there are some people that are motivated by money, and that's what motivates them. If you're motivated by money, I would still say that the public sector is a great place to begin your career, because you will get more experience and you will be given more authority in a public agency or a city or a county than you will ever get until you're probably close to my age particularly a large private sector company. It's just a matter of fact. Nationwide, we had almost 400 people in our security operations. The state of Ohio has less than 100. And then if you include the agencies, we might be up into the mid 150s. So it actually is about the same size as my old company, but has about less than half the people. So you're actually, to scale those people out, you're responsible for more. And so you're going to get more experience working in a public sector environment. And as I said earlier, like there's a stair step to people's careers, right? So there's a couple 100,000 entry-level jobs at any one time that are available out there. And then the largest chunk is going to be, 250, 300,000 people, jobs that are in that 3 to 10 years experience. Well, you got to get experience somewhere. It's hard to get
Right.
it's hard to get hired by a private sector employer who's going to pay you a lot of money if you have no experience. So go to the public sector, do 3 to 5 years, and really it's public service. So give back to your community, give back to your state, help protect your family and your friends and your community, and then use it as a launching pad for for making more money, and you can. Now, conversely, you could also spend your entire career being very engaged and have a lot of growth within the public sector. And I mean, the upside on the public sector is there aren't a whole lot of private sector entities that have pensions anymore. The benefits tend to be, from my experience personally, demonstrably better and less expensive than the private sector. So again, don't always look at your sort of average annual pay, because your pay goes a little bit longer and a little bit further in the public sector than it does in the private sector. My experience is you'd probably have to make 20 to 25% more to leave a public sector job before you'd actually see a lot more in your pay, in your take-home pay. So to me, there's a balancing there, and again, you're just going to get a lot more experience. You're going to get a lot more experience in the public sector just because there's less of you, and you got more. You kind of have more front to protect.
Yeah, no, both points. Mission driven, definitely experienced that here at Cleveland State University. A little different mission because any academic institution,
absolutely.
But also I tell my students, both law students and master legal studies students, if unless you have a driving need for that higher paycheck in some ways, and as you point out, especially at the entry level, it's not necessarily that different. If you can spend some time in the public sector, you benefit in all sorts of ways.
You do.
And you can bring that experience to bear, and you get a leg up if and when you move into the private sector, or a career in the public sector has lots and lots of benefits in a variety of ways.
Yep.
So let's pivot now and just talk a little bit about some of the programs that you've helped to stand up in Ohio in your role as the strategic advisor on cybersecurity to help build that pipeline.
Sure. So when the governor asked me to come help a little over 2.5 years ago, this was an ill-defined role, but I was fortunate enough to step into it with an executive order waiting for me, which laid out kind of the guardrails for what my missions would be. And there are 4. And one is to protect the base, we call it, and that is really making sure that the executive branch agencies for the state of Ohio are as good as we can kind of reasonably make them within our budgets. And we've been making great rounds of improvement over the last 2 years in that regard, and have really attracted. And we're talking about we're attracting top flight talent at all levels. And so a lot of people say, oh, you're not going to be able to get, the best talent in here to, to do what you want to do. And I can tell you that with good leadership, you can do that. Now, will they stay around forever? I don't know, but they certainly are here. They are training and mentoring. So we also have a much more of a better mentoring and a succession planning. So somebody leaving isn't as impactful as it would have been before I got here, because we already are identifying who's going to take those roles when either people get promoted or move on. We have another pillar that we call assisting the locals, and that is a lot of programs, including we just concluded about a $7 million grant program for cybersecurity capabilities that we're kind of wading through the grant proposals right now. We'll be announcing probably in the next month or so the results of that. We have built a cyber integration center, which is the first ever fusion center between the Department of Public Safety and the Adjutant General, i.e. the Guard. We have them now their cybersecurity elements co-located to help local governments do incident response. we helped Cleveland a couple months ago. We were up there helping. We've helped in some other places, Columbus, and some schools and some local governments. They also do education and awareness and assessments. And then the third one is cyber workforce, and that's one that originally I thought I was really more of a cheerleader in that regard, and I still do. I connect people with resources, because there are programs at Department of Education and Workforce and Department of Higher Education, among others, that are helping to establish and to encourage cyber academies at the high school, the tech school levels, and then to also support the Ohio Cyber Range Institute, which is down at University of Cincinnati, which is a capability that scales out to, among others, regional program centers, which Cleveland State is one of. And
Right.
and it's basically a shared cloud environment that all higher ed and high school tech schools can use, rather than everybody go out and buy their own or rent their own cloud environment. There's it sits there, and it has all of these programs and kind of academic programs and other sort of tests and things that are already in there, so that everybody can use them. And then just about a month and a half ago, it took me 2 years to get it done, but it finally happened. We have a pilot program where we are encouraging the development of cyber academies in what I would call lower income, lower served communities. So it not only includes urban communities, but a lot of our rural communities are in very dire economic needs, and they don't have the capacity to build a cybersecurity academy like a more affluent suburban school district might be able to. And so we're going to effectively create and seed 6 of these around the state in different communities. We're developing it right now. It will be for the school year of 25-26, and then based upon the outcomes, it may become a programmatic capability going forward through DEW, where we encourage and facilitate more of these from a workforce perspective. And it's also going to be a model that we're going to use for computer science in general. Cybersecurity is kind of going to be the first capability, because it's really one of the things we need more out of the gate. But the one thing that Governor DeWine, Lieutenant Governor Houston have been doing for the last couple of years is encouraging more and more tech development here in Ohio, and bringing more business and companies to Ohio. But they need to have a workforce that's trained to work there, right? So, and as we've seen over the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks now, tech more than anybody, but everybody is asking people to come back to work. So,
Yeah.
I think the days when you could work for Amazon and live in northern Vermont on a lake are waning. So we have to have the population here. We have to have the workforce here trained. And then at the state level, we've put together this really interesting called the Ohio Digital Academy, which is it's a play on what the feds have tried in the past. I think they just doubled down on it in the last couple months. But we will pay up to $40,000 of your student loans if you make a 3-year civil service commitment to the state of Ohio. And at the end of that, there will be a private sector partnership where a percentage of those folks will have the opportunity to effectively leave and go to a private sector employer who's looking for, you've got 3 years of experience now, and you'll be able to go off and work at wherever, Procter & Gamble, Huntington, Nationwide, AEP, wherever it is. And so we are finding, we just launched our 3rd cohort And I think the applications that close on that, we'll have another one probably in March. We're finding we're getting between 300 and 500% more applicants, higher quality applicants for those than we have typically had for IT jobs. We were a little heavy on the security in the first cohort or two because we had a bigger need there, but we also have data science roles, we have programming roles, we have systems administrator roles, cloud management roles. So it's really a broader than just security, but
yeah,
my team did start it and it's been very successful, and we'll be asking for it to be reauthorized next year in the next budget. I think we have a very good story to tell, and I think we have a very good chance that it'll be reauthorized.
Excellent. So before we pivot now to talk a little more detail about our program, and I'm going to keep you on the line just for a little bit, Kirk, at the beginning of that. Any questions for Kirk? All right, so I'm going to share my screen and bring up the slide deck I've got. So as I mentioned at the top, here at Cleveland State University College of Law, we have a variety of, I'm going to stop the closed captioning. We have a variety of degrees and certificates related to cybersecurity and data privacy. Within the JD program, we have a certificate, but our biggest program, and for now, the only dedicated cybersecurity related degree at Cleveland State University writ large, is the Master of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy. And it is a program that is going to give you what I like to call a 360-degree view of the field. It provides a grounding on the technical side. If you do not have a technical background, you do not have to have a technical background to enroll in this program. We work you through the basics and go into some depth. And I'll talk about the curriculum here in a second. But the bulk of the program focuses on the legal and regulatory requirements. And the reason we do that is because any role that you play really is going to have a significant interaction with those requirements. And this is where I want to keep on the line quickly, Kirk. From your perspective, obviously you're a lawyer, right? You teach in the program, you teach the core privacy course, as I mentioned, but you work with professionals in a variety of roles, including technical roles. Why is a degree that focuses on the law and regulatory environment important throughout your career, and regardless of whether you're in a technical or a non-technical role?
Well, because the failure of privacy controls or the failure of cybersecurity controls are inherently legal. And they throw you into either breach notification requirements, where you then often get sued or investigated by an attorney general, or if you're highly regulated, by one of your own regulators. So, it is, I hate to say that, you do it because for the negative impact, but ultimately you exist because there's liability for not doing it or not doing it well. And that's really the bottom line. Now, I think it has become, if you do it really well, I think you can use it as and I've seen this, you can use it as a marketing benefit, particularly with commercial customers and others that where this is really going to make a difference. In my old world, like if we were going to do a pension, if we were going to be a pension plan administrator, it was very important to the plan sponsor that we have certain levels of security controls and certifications in place in order to even get the RFP opportunity, right? So you had to sort of prove your bona fides before you could even apply to the RFP to try to get the business. So yeah, it is, and there's state and federal laws around security. As more and more states, there's now 18 or 19 states that have comprehensive privacy laws. They also all have some mention in there around security requirements, reasonable security, which Brian and I have talked about on panels. We've written about. You can find it online. And so, I would argue that even if you are not highly regulated today by a regulator, there is an attorney general that is all in these states, and in, again, a growing number of states, who are who would be very interested if your security failed. And again, it becomes effectively a legal controversy at that point. And even in the states that don't have comprehensive privacy and cybersecurity, most attorney generals regulate this under their Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practice Act. In other words, it's 2024, people. You need to have privacy and security controls. That's just reasonable. So,
right. Yeah, and then pivoting it ahead, we covered the career outlook earlier. I'm going to let you go here in just 1 second. This is the core curriculum that we have. As I mentioned, it has that 360-degree view. On the technical side, Cybersecurity 1, Cybersecurity 2, and the technical capstone give you that relatively in-depth understanding. Although important to note, this is not a program where if you do not have a technical background and want to get into a technical role, this is not the program for you. If you are that kind of person and you want to go get a certification or something else on the technical side, this still is an excellent program because all of the courses really provide information that are going to live with you as you progress through a career, and in many ways get increasingly important the more responsibility you take on, where you're taking on strategic roles. If you already have a technical background, then we really give you that depth on the legal regulatory side and the strategic side, where you're thinking through, as Kirk mentioned, how do we avoid a breach and work with our advisors and our C-suite internally on managing the consequences of that. But even ahead of that, and on an ongoing basis, how do we identify and deal with the requirements of a variety of laws in place? And so the core legal course that we have, the main requirement is privacy law management. And I wanted to ask Kirk one more question before we let him go. Kirk teaches that course. He and I developed it together, but really it's his course. I was kind of his TA as we built it because it was the first time teaching. Tell us a little bit about that course, Kirk, and why it's such an important part of this program.
Well, I believe we've set it up to be an umbrella which provides you with a serving of everything kind of that you need to know in every space. So you will get a little bit of HIPAA, you'll get a little bit of security, you'll get a lot of privacy, you'll get a little bit of corporate compliance, you get exposed to a little bit of everything over the semester. And we've designed it to be more operational than theoretical. So you got a lot of really good, even writing case studies, which provide you with an exposure to real problems that you're going to have to solve when you are, working with a corporate client. If you're in a law firm, working with a client. If you're in the public service, again, working with your business people. And so we've designed it to be kind of an exposure to everything. And yet I think you could actually, if you're a lawyer, take that and get a good understanding of what your duties are, of what your client's duties are. I will say that the program, the way that Brian has set up his curriculum, it is very operational, and the technical courses, as he said, you don't have to have a lot of technical know-how but there are two, if not three technical courses. And you will get exposed. You can't practice in this space unless you understand at some basic level, really understand the technical capabilities that you are recommending or not recommending or protecting. And so what this does, it's basically a fusion between the law and technology, which to my mind, nobody else actually out there has anything like this today. And hats off to Professor Ray for doing this. And I will say that, that just as someone who practiced it for 25 years, but had never taught it, at least not to, I taught it to young lawyers and young paralegals. It's different though than teaching it.
Right.
The framework that Brian brought to me to be able to plug my knowledge into it was something that I did not have before I started this. And I've become actually, I think, a better practitioner now that I've actually taught it. So again, the program is set up. My class is completely asynchronous, although I do have 3 or 4 live classes throughout the semester, which are really kind of like open-ended office hours. And then, as my students have always found, if you email or text me, I find time to talk to you. And I think that every one of my colleagues in this program has the same philosophy. We're here to really teach the next generation, and try to effectively help you not make the same mistakes we made as we were learning this and applying it as we went along. So
yeah, and that's a great point. We really have fantastic faculty, all of whom have substantial experience in the field. And so just briefly to walk you through it, the Introduction to American Law course is the baseline law course. I created that and teach that. It gives me a chance to get to know everybody who comes into the program. That'll be your first course. That's almost always paired with Cybersecurity 1, taught by Spence Witten, who's a colleague of ours on Cyber Ohio, which was the entity that predated and still exists as an advisory board to the Strategic Advisor office. Cybersecurity 1 and 2 are Cybersecurity 2 and the technical capstone, then are the upper level technical. Legal writing is the second legal baseline course that dovetails with Introduction to American Law. You tend to get that a little bit later. It just reinforces and brings to ground in an applied way how to deal with both consume and to some extent produce legal sources. There's a legal research component to it, but that's key because regardless of your role, you're going to be talking to lawyers at some point, or at least dealing with the mandates that come down or the discussions around how to comply with various legal requirements. And in my experience, the really good technical professionals, especially in forensics organizations, are deeply knowledgeable about the law and down to the really to the individual components and requirements. So those 2 courses get you there. Privacy Law and Management gives you that survey of all the major and most of the U.S. laws, some GDPR. And then Corporate Compliance 1 and 2 we include in the course because privacy always, and cybersecurity generally, in many ways, will sit under the umbrella, as Kirk said, of compliance. Compliance is a broader area, but it has its own particular approach, methodology, and way of operating. It really comes at its historically from anti-fraud. That's where it would originally develop. But the approach of how to avoid fraud, which requires fairly rigorous checks, record keeping, and really paying attention because you're trying to identify if something within the organization is trying to operate against itself or at least operate against the interests of the organization. And although privacy doesn't work that way, cybersecurity very much works that way. And so Corporate Compliance 1 and 2 help you to understand how that works and how you can interact with the compliance both internally and externally. And then HIPAA is the major health law at the federal level that covers cybersecurity and data privacy. It still is, to date, the most comprehensive federal law. We now have some state laws that are as comprehensive or more comprehensive, also the most prescriptive and thick. And so we use that as a deep dive. If you can understand HIPAA and for that matter, almost every organization has HIPAA obligations. So it's important in its own right, but it also gives you a really good opportunity to understand, well, what does a thick set of compliance obligations look like? And as a privacy and cybersecurity professional, what do I have to know about them? And then cyber law takes the lens out a little bit. It goes into the criminal law dimensions and the national security dimensions. That course is taught by a former member of Cyber Command, who's a lawyer. He was a lawyer within the Air Force Cyber Command. He's now a full-time professor at the United States Air Force Academy, teaching these same topics to cadets, as well as continues to work with the professionals in the Air Force. So really interesting background, and gives you that aspect. And as Kirk mentioned, when you're dealing with cybersecurity, you're almost always there's a criminal dimension to it. And more often than not, there's a national security and or international relations dimension, because somewhere back there is a nation state actor. And so that gives you, again, that nice rounding. Important to note, there's a little asterisk there at the bottom. It's not that courses change subject to availability. We almost always offer this package, and this package was created in a very similar way. So if you want to go through and not think too much about what, it will give you all these in sequence and tell you when they're offered, so you get them before you graduate. It's 10 courses across 5 semesters if you go every semester, including summer. But if you come in with either other interests or a background, say a pretty deep technical background, we're always willing to have a conversation around waiving one or more of the technical courses and finding you alternatives, because we have several overlapping programs. And by the way, all the courses here that you see, except Intro to American Law and Legal Writing, you will be in class with JD students. They're the exact same courses that we offer to students who are becoming lawyers. So we're not, it's not a reduced or an easier version, but eminently doable. We've had great success with integrating those two groups of folks. But we have several other courses, and we continue to build courses both for the JD program and for this program. So if you're interested in taking other electives, we always work with you. And there are electives also offered by other colleges that you can take up to 2 courses in outside of the law program. And for that matter, we've had lawyers who come through. If anyone's a lawyer thinking about this, again, happy to waive the Introduction to American Law and Legal Writing courses and get you other electives to get you to those 30 credits. All right, Kirk, happy to let you go now. I want to thank you for your time. I'm going to now end with a few logistics on the application process, but always enjoyed talking with you. Really appreciate everything you're doing for the state of Ohio and for our program.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Brian, and look forward to many years of working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Might see you. Are you going to be in Cincy for OCRI? I'm on a panel.
I will be
Wednesday.
there.
All right. Well, I'll see.
See you in a couple of days.
Catch up then in person. Yeah. All right. Take care, Kirk.
Bye-bye.
All right. And so we already went over this, but the program gives you that 360-degree view. And as Kirk mentions, really is very operationally focused. So helps you to understand not only the information about what cybersecurity and data privacy laws, regulation, and technical aspects mean, but really how to deal with them as a professional in this field. If you're interested in our program, the application deadline is December. You have plenty of time. The next start date will be for the spring semester, starts January 13th. There's a website link right there. Can't link directly to this, but go ahead and write it down, onlinelaw.csuohio.edu. Julie DiBiasio, who usually joins us for these webinars, was unfortunately not available today, but she's your first point of contact. If you email that email, mlsonline@law.csuohio.edu, which you can also find on our website, or call her directly. She and I both get that email, so if it's a question that's better for me to address, I'll respond to it. But usually she'll start with you, and then I'm always happy to talk to prospective students. Okay, with that, any other questions from our attendees. Oop, I got to figure out how to get back. There we go. I need to, apologies, I'm trying to figure out where my toolbar went so I can stop sharing. There we go. Okay. So any questions? If not, I want to thank everyone for coming. And for those of you who are watching the video, thank you for taking the time. Always happy to chat anytime. Feel free to reach out. And again, want to thank NICE and NIST for sponsoring Cybersecurity Awareness Week. Very happy to be part of that. Take care.